Hello, good morning everybody. How are you doing? It's Monday again. It's the 21st of October and I'm going to be making some lovely little bracelets with you today. I figured, as a lot of you seem to like the Natasha bracelets we did, I thought this was quite a nice simple technique using little pearls. Well, two sizes of pearls. So I will show you these. You can probably see them in the corner there down on the mat, little sneaky peek for you. So I'll take you over to the website and I will show you the colours and your choices today. We've got 3 different colours in a silver, a gold and a rose gold coloured wire. And they're very straightforward to do. I think you make 2 bracelets in your kit, or you've got enough to make 2 bracelets, and they're an absolute bargain today. So drop me a comment. How are you doing? Where are you watching from? Big shout out, by the way, to Ruth Watson. I don't know whether she's watching, but I've noticed she shared in the Totally Handmade group the most beautiful shibori, which is kind of like a fabric ribbon kind of embroidery kind of technique, and she's made the most amazing pendants, and she said, oh, it's my first time doing them, and I just think that's amazing. If there's something you've not tried before that you've wanted to, do it. I spent a little bit of the weekend, I've had a design in my head for probably about 2 years now, well, over a year anyway. I wanted to do them for last Halloween and I never got round to it. So I thought, I'm going to get that idea out my head and I'm going to give it a go. So I'm working on a few bits and bobs for that. And I've had a very nice weekend and I hope you have too. So let me see who's in and what you've been up to. Linda says, good morning, Natalie and my beading family from a bright Watford. Oh my gosh, did anybody else get the storm last night? It was so windy, really windy. There's barely a leaf left on my tree. Rachel says, good morning from a bright and breezy Barrow. It's like a tongue twister reading your comments out. Rachel Bailey, bright and breezy Barrow. Good morning to Jan. She says, good morning, Natalie and everyone from an overcast Sudbury. Good morning to Teresa. Good morning to Jan. Hello to Elaine. So I've got a few of you in now, so I'm going to take you over to the website. We are on totallybeads.co.uk as always. I'm already in it a little bit early, so I'll go back out just to show you. If you're not sure how to find it, head over to the Totally Beads website, totallybeads.co.uk, and you can click in the video tutorial section on the main page or in the learn to make jewelry category, and if you scroll down, it's just here, so it's next to the Natasha fire polish jewelry with the check beads. This is Estrid pearl bracelets. Really straightforward and simple to do. No wrapping, just kind of, well, there's no weaving. I suppose you're just kind of wrapping and shaping that wire. 2 gauges of wire and 2 sizes of pearls. So we've got the golden haze, the powder blue and the watermelon. They've all been reduced, so they're all £4.99. So for less than £5, you can make up 2 bracelets, which is an absolute bargain, and they won't take you long. I reckon you could probably get this done in about maybe 20 minutes. I don't really like saying it'll take you this long because everybody's different. But once you've got that first little cluster on, it's very repetitive but really nice, straightforward, easy make. So I'll show you what you're using and what's in your kit. So it's making 2 bracelets for £4.99. This is the golden haze colourway. You're getting 2 gauges of your wire, which is your 0.6 and your 0.8. So of the 0.8, which is 20 gauge, I'm using about 9 inches or 23 centimetres ish. Again, you can adjust that length to suit what you require. And on the 0.6 wire, which is 22 gauge, I'm using about 70 centimetres, which is about 28 inches. You've got your glass pearls in your 4 and your 6 millimetre rounds, and those glass pearls are the same colour as each other. So if you get the golden haze, they'll both be golden haze. But you could definitely mix these up if you wanted to use a different colour on, say, the larger or the smaller pearls. You could definitely do that. You're getting jump rings and a lobster clasp as well, which is going to match the colour of the wire. So have a little scroll down if you want to see exactly, you know, what colour and what name each of the components are. So this is the golden haze with the gold wire and the gold findings. Very pretty, very straightforward to do. So that's your gold haze Estrid pearl bracelet. We've got this lovely powder blue as well, which is on the silver. So that's how it looks. looks better on. It's very, very pretty. And I'm using the powder blue 4 and 6mm pearls and the copper wire, which is silver coloured on this one. In again, 2 gauges, 0.6, which is your 22 gauge, and your 0.8, which is your 20 gauge wire. And we've also got this lovely pink watermelon colourway as well. And then you get your rose coloured wire and your rose gold coloured findings as well. So 2 sizes of glass pearls, 2 gauges of wire, 2 jump rings, 1 lobster clasp, and away you go. In terms of tools, I'm using my wire straighteners, which are just nylon coated ones, but you can run that wire through your fingers, through a cloth if you need to. It is copper, so it's nice and easy to kind of manipulate and move. I'm using probably the bail step making pliers, the 6-step ones, but you can use your round nose pliers. You don't need to have the bail step pliers. I might switch it up and use the round nose instead. I'm using a pair of chain nose pliers or maybe tweezer tip pliers just to kind of compress the little loops in. But again, that's not a necessity. You can use your fingers for that, and 2 pairs of pliers just to open up my jump ring at the end. So minimal materials, minimal tools, and a whole lot of fun. I'm just trying to get my page to come back up. It's having a little moment. My computer's been on bright and early this morning, so it's having a rest. It's been a tired one today. I don't know whether it was the wind keeping me up, but I had a very busy weekend. I've been pumpkin carving and all sorts. So he's got school kind of competition and Halloween disco tomorrow. So we've been carving pumpkins and no prizes if you can guess what we've carved onto our pumpkin. Good morning to Elaine. Hello to Judith. Oh my gosh, she said, good morning, Natalie and everybody. Sunny and windy in West Lothian after 45-mile-per-hour winds last night. Sue's wishing everybody a good morning. Anastasia's in from Atlanta, Georgia. She says it's 50 degrees here and highs of 76 around 11 p.m. Gosh, that's warm, isn't it? That's really warm for that time of night. I struggle with my conversions. Good morning to Kath. She's got a cuppa and a half for me. I had to take both of them. Camille says, good morning. Another dull day again this time. I can really ask you how the weekend was. Yeah, it's Monday today. It was good. I had a really nice weekend. Went out on Friday, which was lovely. Had a date night. Thanks, Mum, for having Frank for me. What did I do Saturday? I can't remember. It was a blur. And then I had like a holistic fair on Sunday, which was really lovely. So very, very busy one. What did I do Saturday? Oh, recovered. Good morning to Carol. Hello to Rayati. Good morning to you. Okay, I'm going to take you down on the mat. I'm going to show you these bracelets and we're going to get making. As I say, it's a nice quick make today. We've got this beautiful powder blue on the silver. We're not making a clasp today. We're just going to use that little lobster clasp. But of course, I have shown you how to make your own clasps before, so you could do that absolutely with this if you wanted to. Oh, thanks, Camille. Yeah, Anastasia, we probably are having the storm you had last week. I mean, it's still incredibly windy. Last night it was ferocious wind. It's still blowing a little bit now, and then it goes really still again. So I don't know whether it's another calm before the storm. Good morning, Jackie. How you doing? So that one is your powder blue on the silver. Again, just using those 4 little smaller 4mm beads in a little cluster, and then separating it out and alternating that pattern with the larger 6mm. This one is your golden haze on the gold colourway. Very pretty, very delicate, and really light as well. As bracelets go, it is a bracelet rather than a bangle, and it's just easy to shape and really pretty to wear. So I'm just going to open up that lobster clasp and slide that on, and you can see how that will fit. Good morning, Shirley. How are you doing? She says Florida raining again. I love knowing what the weather's doing all over the world. So that one is your golden haze. And then this one is your watermelon, which is very pretty pink. I love that colour. But you can mix these colours up if you wanted to. You could do a little cluster of each colour if you wanted to multi-buy. You're getting 2 bracelets for £4.99, or rather the materials to make 2 bracelets. So a good little bargain today. So I'm going to start off with my wire. I'm going to take the 0.8, which is 20 gauge wire, and I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit on my reel. So I'm just running it through my very battered nylon coated pliers. You can also run that through your fingers as well. I just want to straighten that up. Cut the length of which you think you're going to want. I'm going to do probably about an 8-inch bracelet. So I'm going to cut 9 inches just so I've got that little extra to turn my loops. So I'm cutting at 9 inches, which is about 23 centimetres. And I'm just going to take my flush cutters and just trim that off my reel. So that is all the 0.8 wire we're going to need for this make. I'll just move my ruler out the way for now. And then I'm going to take my bail step pliers or my round nose pliers, and I'm going to turn a little loop at the end. If you wanted to, you could, of course, do a wrap loop on this and make it really sturdy. You could make a larger loop on this, and you could cut a little longer of your wire if you wanted to make that kind of shepherd's hook clasp out of wire yourself. You could do that, but you're going to have your findings in your kit, so you can just attach those on really easily. Hello to Lee's Jewelry and Gems. She says, good morning from Mississippi Gulf Coast. It's a cool 53 Fahrenheit this morning. And Royati says it's a really pretty bracelet for many occasions. Thank you. Hello to Angela. She says, thank you again, love it. You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much, Angela. Really appreciate it. She says, the bracelets are lovely. I'm making things for craft fair, and I've got loads of Totally Beads items to do. Well, this will be a really good make for you if you wanted to do some wire bangles, Angela, because it's really, really quick and very straightforward. So I've cut my 9 inches of my 0.8 or 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to make a small little loop. So I'm going to use the second smallest on my bail step plier. Again, you can use your round nose if you want to. I'm going to pop that nice and flush in between, and I'm just going to turn all the way around to create that little P shape. I'm then going to pop it back in, or keep it in, and I'm going to tilt it back. So all I'm doing is pushing that wire against that bottom one really, just to straighten it up so that loop is sitting nicely on the top. Now, if you ever want to harden your wire and you want to stiffen that loop so it's got a little bit more rigidity to it, you can hammer if you wanted to, but as we've got a plated wire, I don't want to take any of the coating off. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my chain nose or flat nose pair of pliers, and I'm just going to press just gently around. And although you're not doing much to it, what is actually happening is you're changing kind of the molecular structure of the wire. So that's just hardening it a little bit, and then it's got a little bit more rigidity on that loop. And you want it to be quite sturdy for when you're attaching your clasp, because you want it to kind of lock in place. But of course, if you wanted to, you could do a wrap loop instead. I'm now going to take my 28 inches or 70 centimetres of the 0.6 wire, which is 20 gauge, and I've straightened that out as I've cut it off my reel, and I'm just putting those two ends together just to find the centre of that. So I'm going to bring it up just so I've found almost the centre on that wire. I've got a little bit of lag today. I think it's going a little bit slow, so hopefully it's not freezing or anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide that wire. Don't worry if it bends, you can straighten it out. I'm going to pop the 0.8 20 gauge wire through that little loop. This is going to be kind of like the core of the bracelet that's going to run through the center, and this 0.6 is going to act as like the kind of wrapping framing wire. So I'm going to just bring that loop up and across just to anchor it round. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to straighten that up a little bit because I didn't do the neatest job. So all I've done is just wrap that round once in the centre. If I can hold this here, you can see how I've just wrapped that round. So I've got one tail end of the wire that's running upwards and one end which is running down, and I'm going to hold this so it's kind of horizontally parallel across. This will twist and turn, and that's fine. It might be a little bit tricky putting your first lot of beads on, and then after that it's really straightforward and it gets easier as you move along. Good morning, Lisa. She's saying hello to everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my 4mm pearls. I'm using the beautiful powder blue. So I'm going to take a couple of these off my string. And I'm going to start off with that little cluster of 4. Let me just open up the 6mm as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of the 4mm pearls and I'm going to just thread them on to the 20 gauge wire, or the 0.8, which is the core of my bracelet. So just sliding 2 little pearls up, and they're going to butt up against that little wrap. Hopefully you can see that okay. I wonder if I should have used a different colour wire. It may have showed a little bit better. So it's just going to go underneath the loop and underneath the wrap. And I'm going to always work off the top and then the bottom. It doesn't really matter, but I like to keep that repetition going. So when I start to wind that wire over, it all kind of stays in the same kind of position as the bracelet continues on that pattern. So I'm going to take this wire that's running up the top, and I've popped another 4mm pearl on. I'm just keeping it in position under my finger here. So these beads are going to stay underneath that loop just on my finger, and I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to bring it over. And when I do that, I'm going to keep that little pearl in between, so it's sitting on the outside but in between those 2 pearls on the 20 gauge 0.8, and then pinching it with my finger to hold it in place. And I'm going to bring that 0.6 wire over the top, really close down to that pearl on the base wire, and then it's just going to go back up. So it's going to lock it in place. If you want to, you can take a pair of pliers, chain nose or whatever, and you can give that little wire a little push there. Sorry, in shot knot. A little bit there just to kind of push it down and kind of lock it in place. So this goes in front, behind and up. And then this wire here, which is coming down, is going to go around with another pearl on. So I'm going to pop my another my 4mm onto the 0.6 22 gauge wire. Again, it's going to go round, so it is going to be sitting on the other side in between those 2 pearls. Instead of going in front this time, I'm going to take that wire behind, and then it's going to come back over the top and down. And each time I do that, you'll notice I'm just going to run it through my fingers just to straighten it up a little bit. Again, if you want to, you can come in with your pliers and you can give it a little press down, and that's just going to lock that wrap nice and tight, and those beads aren't going to move. And once you've done that first one, it gets really easy from there. Hello to Pauline, how are you doing? Good morning to Sheila as well, who's saying hello to everybody. If you've got any questions, do drop me a comment. If you've got any tips, let me know. I'm now going to do the next stage of that pattern. So I'm just going to take the 6mm bead and I'm going to slide that onto the main body of the wire. So I'm only ever going to put 6mm beads onto this wire here in the middle. And then the only time I'm going to put beads onto these wires is going to be the 4mm beads when I'm doing this cluster. Again, don't worry if this wire turns. You can see there that my loop's turning round. That's absolutely fine. So I'm pushing that 6mm bead up to that wrap. I'm taking the top wire I know you can't see at the moment because my finger's holding it in place, so I'll try and do it without. And it's coming over the top of the wire and then back behind the wire and up. Again, if you want to, you can press and tighten that down, and that's just going to frame that bead. And then the bottom wire is going to go around the bead, shaping around that bead again. We've paused, there we go, around that bead again, but this time the bottom wire goes behind. And then over and back down. So the bottom wire is always the bottom wire, your top wire is always the top wire, and that's just framing around those beads. If you want to, give it a little push, and that will just push that wire around to frame that bead a little bit more. And now we're going to go back to the 4mm cluster. So 2 4mm beads onto the main body of the wire, so onto the 20 gauge wire, the 0.8, which is running through the center. I'm going to add 1 4mm bead onto the wire that's sitting above. And then as I bring that wire over, I want that bead, little glass bead there, just to sit in between the two, over the front and around the back. If you feel like the wire's going up a little bit more than it needs to be, you can just give it a little push down in place so it's running back vertically. Thanks, Camille, she has nice autumn nails. And then I'm going to add on another 4mm bead onto the bottom wire. That's going to go, and as I just bring this wire around, you'll see that bead moves already into place, and I want it to stay in the middle, behind the wire and around to the front again. Give it a little straighten out, and then you can see that is just the pattern that I'm repeating. Push it down and give it a little pinch if needed, just to tighten it up, and then back with the 6mm bead. So it's just a repetition of that. No beads go around the 6mm, just the wire on its own. So framing around that bead in kind of a hugging position. Use your fingers and your nails if you prefer. Going around the back of the wire, so it's coming from the front around the back and up the top. And then the bottom wire is going to go around the bead to the back of the wire and around and down the front. If you want to, give it a little push and a press. I'm just gently pressing on those wires. I'm not pressing on the glass pearl, and that will just tighten it up a little bit. Shirley's asking, what gauge wire are you putting the 4mm beads on? It's a 0.6 22 gauge, Shirley. So I've got the 0.8, which is 20 gauge, which is the center of it, and I've cut that to about 9 inches. And then I'm using 28 inches or 70 centimeters of the 0.6 22 gauge to kind of frame the beads. So 2 4mm pearls going back on to the core wire, and I'm pushing that up against that little wrap. Bead on the outer wire, going in the front and then behind, and then a bead on the bottom wire, sliding that down, and that goes behind and back in front. Pearl, you can also push down with the pearl, and that will push those wires as well. You're very welcome, Shirley. But I always tend to go with the top wire first, so I hold it this way. So I do top wire first and then the bottom wire. Giving it a little pinch will just surround that bead a little bit more around the back and back down the front. So it gets easier as you get less wire, and it's just repeating that pattern until you've got the length of the bracelet that you're after. You could, of course, turn this into part of a necklace if you wanted to curve it that way, and you could add a chain on, or you could cut a much longer length of wire and you could do a full necklace with it. So I'm just pushing them pearls together so there's no space between them. They're sitting up against each other, and then the beads on the outer side will just sit in the middle of them both. Now all I'm doing here is just pushing gently on that wire just to tighten it up. And then one onto the bottom. Rayati saying, so the second wire really locks the pearls in place and that's why you don't need to double wrap. No, it will just, they'll all just push together. So this can just go over kind of like a half wrap, because the next wire that comes from the bottom that goes behind and down then locks this wire in place, and there's no moving those beads now, they're all kind of fixed into position. You could, if you wanted, use a thicker gauge wire for the core. You could use your 1mm for that, which is 18 gauge, but you need to make sure that the beads that you're using, in this case the glass pearls, fit onto the wire through the drill hole. So I quite like using the 0.8 or the 20 gauge, because as I say, you can just harden your loops and you've got that kind of rigidity for your bracelet, but also it's still soft enough to, you know, I'm not fighting with it when I come to shape it. I can just shape it with my fingers. So 6mm bead on, wrapping over the top, coming in front of the wire and behind it, and the bottom wire going behind the wire and in front. Hello Kathleen, just watching from the US. It's 5:30 AM here. Lovely design, but I may need to re-watch when I'm a bit more awake. But I'm not very much awake this morning either, to be honest, Kathleen. And I've got no excuse because it's nearly 10:30. Angela says she's going to re-watch later. She's almost home from walking the dogs and she's forgot her glasses. Yeah, you need to see what I'm doing, but it's very straightforward. And as Rayati says, you know, that those wires are just going to lock those beads in. So you don't need to be doing like particular wraps and anything overcomplicated. So next is the little cluster of 4mm beads. If you wanted, you could also change the design so you just do the 4mm beads. You could do whatever you want. I think it looks nice alternating between the 6mm and the 4. And again, I just tend to run it against my finger just to straighten it up. So now I've talked you through it and gone fairly slow. I'll speed up a bit so you can see how quick it is. Just make sure you always take one wire around the front and one around the back, and that will keep that wrap really neat and uniform throughout the bracelet. Well, thank you so much for all your nice comments. We've got lots of US watchers today. I hope you're all okay. I know the weather's been very, very bad in lots of places. So make sure you're all safe. Back on with the 4. Drop that bead down. And as I'm not even really placing this bead now, all I'm doing is just moving the wire, and it sits pretty much in the middle where I want it to. You can kind of flatten it down with your fingers and reposition as you go. The pearls are really pretty, Royati. Yeah, I love a glass pearl. They're very uniform in terms of, their shape. You've got that lovely rounded bead and shape to use. They come in so many colours. Totally Beads have got a real good range of different shapes, different sizes and different colours and different tones. So there's so many different pink ones to choose from. There's so many different shades of blue to choose from. And they're very reasonably priced as well, because they are glass beads. You've got that lovely colour coating on them, so they've got that lovely kind of shine and lustre to them. But they're very pocket friendly. And they're also very lightweight as well. So you can do all sorts with them. They're so versatile. You can do stitch projects with them. I'm using wire with them. The possibilities with them are just endless. It's always my go-to. I adore gemstone beads. And I love freshwater pearls and things like that. My favourite would be a gemstone bead, but I find they are my go-to when I'm putting a kit together at Totally Beads, because there's just so many of them. I think they give us as designers much more scope to come up with different colourways, because there's just so many of them. And the wire, I think, is non-tarnish. Yeah, it tends to be coated, so it's copper, and then it's got like a silver coloured plating over it, and it does tend to be like colour remain, so it is like a tarnish resistant. All metal will tarnish over time. Even, I always say it, but even if you've got like 19 karat gold, all metal does oxidize over time. But I tend to find this wire really does keep its colour for a long time. I just treat it like I would any other metal, so don't get it wet, because metals can rust, so don't get it wet. Always say make sure your jewellery is the last thing you put on and the first thing you take off. So when you're putting your lotions and your perfumes and things like that, just don't smother your jewellery and your lotions and your potions, and it should last a long time. To be honest, I tend to find that this tarnishes a lot less quickly than, say, my sterling silver would, or a sterling filled wire would, or a bare copper would. But because it's copper, it's really malleable. It's nice and soft. It's lovely to use. It's not too springy. It retains its shape. And again, you've got a big choice of the different colours that you can use as well, and lots of different gauges available on the website. So I'm just making sure when I bring this wire around at the top, really, that it's hugging that bead and it's tight to it. And then if I do a little bit of pressure on that wire, it kind of brings that bottom one slightly up a little bit more, so it really kind of frames that bead. Maybe you could teach icicles, says Shirley. I've not done an icicle. We have had them on Totally Beads before, and we've got little kits for like icicles and snowflakes. You know, Kitty started doing some more Christmas makes and things like that, and winter themed stuff. I'm gonna probably plan some today. Some kind of subtly festive stuff, I think. So over the top and around the back, and then the next bead goes on and it goes around the back, making sure that bead is in between and fairly central, and then nice and tight around. Keep repositioning. You might want to twist a little bit. So I'm just going to keep going with this for a little bit longer, just till I've got a length that I'm happy with. Because it's wire as well, it will kind of mould to your wrist, and you can shape that really nicely. So you can see here it's coming over a little bit. If I just push it very gently with my pliers, kind of tightens up around it. Just straighten it out as you go. Coming around the back and down over the front. Again, it's kind of that wire's a little bit towards the back, if you can see. So just a little press with your chain nose pliers or whatever will just bring it a little bit more front and hug that wire a little bit more. Ah, thank you, Royati. That's really kind of you. Yeah, Camille, she did make some icicles, didn't she? If you go on to, there'll be a Christmas section on the website, or you could just type in icicle. But yeah, I've not done any. Well, I've got something coming up which I've already scheduled. I think that's next week actually, and they can be worn as jewellery or home decor. So you could put them on your Christmas tree or on a keychain or whatever you wanted to do with that, or you could wear it as a pendant. Just positioning that. Make sure those beads are down next to that that little loop. You can see then they wanted to kind of slide up. But I'm just kind of keeping them in place with my fingers. I'm not fighting with it. And then as I bring that wire round, that bead automatically tends to want to sit in between. So yeah, I have got a few festive makes actually. Do we get a sneak peek? Yeah, maybe. But again, you know, we've done, same with the Halloween makes. We've got lots of festive makes you can do any time of year. You can watch them back whenever you want. So I've not done a pumpkin this year, but the pumpkin tutorial is still there on the website, and if you're watching on my YouTube, I put that in like a festive make category. There's also there's little Christmas tree rings. There's various styles of Christmas tree rings actually. I've done little cats as well. We've done what I might revisit near Easter time or springtime. I might do some little like bird nest type things, which was one of the first tutorials I ever did for Totally Beads, which is probably, well, about 3 years ago now. So I might revisit that. We did like pendants and rings, didn't we? Okay, I'm just going to add on my last, I think actually, let me measure this out. I think that's probably big enough for me. If I do 8 inches, I'll do one more repetition. So when you get to the length that you want, I like to finish on the same part of the pattern that I started. So I started with the cluster of 4. Let me just push that down a little. Started with the cluster of 4, so I like to finish with the cluster of 4 as well. So what I will do is add my last singular pearl, and then I will add my last cluster of 4, just as I've done previously. Come on, little pearls. Pulling from the wrong end with the knot in. So let me just push and tighten a little bit. So I'm going to put my 2 pearls on. My light is crackling. And then I'm going to add 1 onto the top wire. And I'm going to bring that over, around and up the top. This time, to finish, I'm going to bring it back round just once. And then I'm going to come in with my cutters and I'm going to trim nice and closely. And then with my pliers, I'm just going to tighten that loop around. So those ends are tucked closely in to that main inner wire. And then going to add my last pearl onto the bottom wire for this side. I call it the bottom because I hold it like that. It's going to go exactly the same, going around the back. It's going to go over, around that loop that we've just made, and once again around the front. And then I'm going to cut my wire off and I'm going to cut it up here so it's on the outside of the bracelet. So give it a little trim and then tuck in again with the pliers just to make sure there's no sharp edges. Push that down to neaten. So I have this shape now. Now if you were making your own clasp, I would have left a little bit of longer wire. I'd have bent it back round, used these 2 gauges, or this smaller gauge of wire, the 22 gauge, to wrap around to hook that wire in place so I can make that kind of shepherd's hook. Let me just show you what I mean from the previous style. So you can make your own hook like that if you wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lovely findings in my kit. So all I need to do is just turn another loop to match this one. So to do that, I'm going to give it a bend horizontally. Again, if you want at this point, you can just flatten it with your fingers, make sure you're happy with the position of everything. If you need to, you can go back in and just flatten any bits out. So I'm going to bend that to like a horizontal, or well, in this case it's vertically, but to a 90-degree bend. I'm going to take my cutters and I'm going to cut off, leaving about 1 centimetre from the bend, like this. And then I'm going to take my round nose pliers or my bail step pliers again to turn that loop. Now I did the second smaller, so I'm going to do the same, so I should have the same size loop. I'm going to make sure it's fairly flush. I'm just going to give it a little turn. Wasn't quite flush there. And I'm just going to turn that all the way around to make sure that loop is fully closed and it's sitting centrally. And then again with the chain nose or flat nose, I'm just going to give it a little press to harden. So just pinching it all the way around and that will firm it up. So now I've got the form of my bracelet. This, with this amount of beads and things on, is sitting at 7.5 inches now. So by the time I've added my jump rings and my clasp, I'll have got to 8 inches. So if you want it any smaller, just add less repetition on. You don't have to finish with the same cluster. If you just wanted to finish with the 6mm, you could do whatever you wanted with that. So now I'm going to take 2 pairs of pliers, and I'm going to open up my jump ring, which will come in your kit. So giving a little turn towards me and sliding it on through that loop at the end and closing it over. And you can get your clasp to sit whichever way you want. So you could just turn those loops. So you could twist the wire and you can have the loop sitting the other way around if you wanted to do it that way. You wouldn't even have to twist the actual loop. You could just flip it and it should probably turn, depending on how tight your wraps are, to the other way. But I like them sitting that way. I'm going to take my other jump ring and open up the other side, attaching that on, and I'm going to add in my 12mm clasp as well, and then close that over. And I'm just going to shape it now. So I would shape it maybe around bracelet mandrel if you've got one, a glass tumbler if you've got one, something cylindrical shaped. Of course, your bracelet, it will fit around your wrist and you can mould that how you want to, but your wrist is oval rather than fully round. So how do you start with the pearls? Do you want to end the same, says Riati? I've started with the cluster of 4 and finished with the cluster of 4, but that's just my personal preference. There's no right or wrong, you do what you want. So I'm going to start shaping it just with my fingers from the middle. So really gently, I'm not putting major, bends in it. Just shaping it nice and soft, nice and malleable. And what I find is by the time I get these 2 ends to meet and I attach my clasp into those jump rings, I can then shape back around and I have my bracelet done and dusted. Again, this is going to be a little bit big for me. It's going to be very big for me, but you can see you can just shape that around your wrist to fit. And that is how to make a very cute, very easy Estrid pearl bracelet using 2 gauges of wire, 2 sizes of pearls. You get 2 bracelets, or 2 lots of materials in your kit to make 2 bracelets, and that will be £4.99. Sheila says a very pretty make. Thank you very much. So I'll just to recap on the colours for you today. We've got 3 to choose from. 1 in the silver, wire and findings, which is this lovely powder blue, which you've just seen me making. We've got that gorgeous watermelon pink on the rose gold colour, kind of pink wire, with the rose gold coloured findings, and we've got the gold with the golden haze pearls as well. So you can see they aren't flimsy. You can still kind of shape them and mould them, but they're quite strong, and they're definitely not going to fall apart, that's for sure. And then there are your 3 lovely colourways. So who was asking me before? Was it Shirley about a sneaky peek? Where have I put them? And you can have a sneaky peek. So I've done wire crosses with you before. So if you were looking for something maybe a little bit festive, you could rewatch the wire cross that I've done. It's very straightforward and simple to do, but it does involve a little bit of weaving and a little bit of coiling, and you can catch that on the replay. You could also turn them into swords if you wanted. So obviously they are a cross, so they are, festive in that sense. Then I was also thinking, with Halloween costumes and things like that, you might want, protect yourself against a vampire. So, but if I can find them, I'm not as organised as I thought I was. Oh, I might have to just leave you in suspense after all. Where have I put them? I'm going to have to find them before next week. No, I'm going to have to leave you in suspense because I don't know where I've put them. They might be in my ready to go box somewhere. But I'm doing some lovely little crosses, beaded crosses, which are dead straightforward, no weaving or anything like that, with a little bit of wire. And I'm using the crackle beads, which are really lovely and colourful, and there's loads to choose from. So you should be able to see what's scheduled to come up next. So if you're watching on YouTube, it might even be scheduled on Facebook, but have a little look on my Natalie Patton Jewellery, and if you click on like the lives, it'll say what's coming up, and the same if you click on the Totally Beads YouTube. Leah says, I'm excited to see you do the cross. They're really, really simple, really quick, lovely makes. You can make that in probably about 10 minutes, if that. So that's what I'm doing next week, I think. On Wednesday, when I'm back with you, I'm going to be doing a bracelet, beaded bracelet, but not like this. There's no wire. So if you prefer to do something like that, then come and join me on Wednesday if you can. Leah says, a beautiful design, very versatile. Hello, Mina, how you doing? You still having fun? Camille says, very pretty. Anastasia says, beautiful, thanks for sharing. Rachel's loving the gold. Royati says it would be very pretty bridesmaid gifts. They would be. They could be something blue, couldn't they? Thank you so much for all your lovely comments. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you have a lovely, lovely week. And if you can come and be with me on Wednesday, then I will see you then.